We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Liz Cheney is out, and with it, the Republican Party faces a new dawn. How long until the politicians finally catch up with those pesky voters? Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we talk the Cheney defeat, the future of the GOP, Biden's Afghanistan legacy, and a gun-free New York state? How bad could that possibly be? I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Hastings, Michigan on WBCH 1220 AM and 93.1 FM. Thank you for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. The Bushes, the Clintons, and now the Cheneys. It seems that former President Donald Trump is officially the legacy slayer, with Liz Cheney losing her primary to a Trump-backed challenger. But how momentous is this ousting, and what does it tell us about the state of American politics? Well, to help us dig deeper on these questions, we're joined by longtime host of this here Liberty Nation radio show and senior political analyst for LibertyNation.com, Mr. Tim Donner. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Hello, Mark.
So, Tim, a really simple question here. Are we witnessing the end of an era with Liz Cheney's 37% loss?
That was stunning because the polls called for between 20 and 30, and the repudiation of Liz Cheney was so thorough and so devastating that, yeah, that's the end of a dynasty. I mean, that's the third dynasty. That's the trifecta. That's winning the Triple Crown in horse racing to knock off the Bush dynasty, the Clinton dynasty, and the Cheney dynasty. I don't think the intention of Trump was to end the Cheneys until, of course, Liz Cheney made it her life's mission to take down Trump and to collude with the Democratic Party to do so. In fact, to serve as the mouthpiece for the Democratic Party in the January 6th hearings. But yes, beyond the Bushes, the Clintons, and the Cheneys, three dynasties slayed by a single man, which is unprecedented. And I use that word sparingly. It's what it is. Even more than that, Mark, I think, is the death pangs of neoconservatism. Liz Cheney is the face of the old Republican Party, the Bush, McCain, Romney Republican Party. That's what she represents here. McCain hated Trump. Romney hates Trump. The Bushes hate Trump. And they all represent a single viewpoint within the party, which is the neoconservative viewpoint, which cost, of course, the Republicans big time over the Obama years, but they have shed that completely now. It's like a snake that's shed its skin to some extent. And so Trump has taken over the party. There's no question. And after this raid on Mar-a-Lago, the idea of anybody but Trump getting the nomination now seems far more distant. Ron DeSantis has been knocked down a peg for sure, because now even people that aren't wild about Trump are getting behind him on principle because of the raid and what it represents.
Yeah, we discussed that last week, didn't we? We talked about how, you actually really called it precisely when we talked about this on last week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, where you said that these actions have almost made Trump a martyr. And I think that's that really has played out over these last 7 days. You mentioned again about how Trump's brought down three dynasties. I think the only comparable event, because this was unprecedented, as you say, that the only comparable event was Brexit. And that took down two prime ministers. It impacted three general elections. I think that's the only other event. And of course, the two are inextricably linked. Trump and
absolutely.
Brexit.
It's a very good analogy.
So Liz Cheney, she's trying to snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat, her Trump-imposed defeat, with a possible presidential run. Now, she hasn't announced, but she's made all the right noises that those who have watched over the decades know she's running. You know, she's certainly going to at least put out an exploratory committee, set up a couple of PACs to start seeing what kind of money's there.
She's issued what you call a non-denial denial of her plans to run for president. Yes.
So you wrote an article on LibertyNation.com just a few days ago called Liz Cheney's Fatal Conceit. Now, would you care to explain that title and the premise a little bit more for us?
Well, let me read you the first, or repeat the first sentence in that story. Only in the bubble-wrapped environs of the Washington swamp could the most unpopular Republican in the country suffer a blowout defeat and then compare herself to Abraham Lincoln. Fatal conceit. Abe Lincoln? Really? Oh, the hubris. I mean, yes, she's going to run for president as what, a martyr. But it makes sense at some level, Mark, even though she's a laughing stock at the idea of running for president when she gets defeated in her own party's primary by 37% in the most pro-Trump state in the country, or one of the top 2 or 3. Okay, so it makes some sense for this reason, Mark, because her singular goal in life, or her political life, it seems, is to deny Donald Trump another shot at the presidency, to deny him the White House. So whatever stragglers there are in the Republican Party, and there are, a fair number that are uncomfortable with Donald Trump, if she runs as an independent, she may well believe she can siphon off just enough votes to deny Trump another term in the White House. So in some sense, it makes sense, but it also just demonstrates the Washington hubris to a degree that we haven't even seen for all these years, when the Congress has been marginally more popular or less popular, depending on the year, as used car salesmen. The popularity there, you pointed out in that article that we were just discussing, the fatal conceit, that according to the numbers, Liz Cheney is certainly the most unpopular Republican, but it's by such a measure that she's was it 40? She's 45
behind Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell, who until
was the second most disliked,
until Cheney started her religious mission to remove Donald Trump from public life, Mitch McConnell was easily the most unpopular figure, not just in the Republican Party, Mark, but in the entire country, because, of course, Democrats hate him. But he is so far ahead of Liz Cheney that you have to look at it and say, Liz Cheney is not only the most unpopular politician in the entire country, but as she is by such a breathtaking margin that, I guess she figures that when she runs for president, people won't care about her so much as the fact that she's just somebody to vote for that isn't Trump and isn't the Democrat.
I think specifically here, we're looking at somebody that isn't also Joe Biden, because if he does
run,
exactly.
So she can appeal to the people that can see that Joe Biden is a doddering old man who's not up to the job, which makes them uncomfortable voting for him, but they're uncomfortable with Trump, perhaps mostly because of January 6th and the end of his presidency. And she gives people a third choice that allows them to signal virtue by saying, I didn't vote for Biden or Trump. I voted for the rebel Liz Cheney. Unfortunately for her, I think that's a tiny little group that could meet in a virtual telephone booth as far as politics goes, because Republicans hate her to a degree we haven't seen in a long time. And of course, Democrats will toss her out with yesterday's trash as soon as her usefulness is done as their mouthpiece for the January 6th committee.
A rebel without a cause, without a platform, and without a plan. Tim Donner, We'll be right back discussing how GOP voters have chosen the America First future. Right after this break, don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Getting noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.